Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is well. We're just going to start in another 30 seconds to a minute or so, just to let everyone jump off their previous meetings and join this webinar. So we'll expect to get started in the next, like I say, 30 seconds to 1 minute. Thank you. Okay, we're just after 2 minutes past, so hopefully everyone that was coming from previous calls and meetings has had a chance to get out and grab a drink or something and come and join us on this webinar. So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on our webinar this morning. My name is Matt, and I head up the data science and AI function at Telefónica Tech UK and I. So our massive role at Telefónica Tech UK and I, particularly in the data science and AI department, is to really support our customers with their journey to adopting AI. How can they make valuable and impactful progress with their AI initiatives to ensure they're delivering long-lasting value for their organization? And that is principally the theme of our webinar today. How do we pave the way for that road to AI adoption and make sure that you've thought about all the right things, got all the right considerations in place, and aware of all the facts that you need to know in order to really adopt AI in a successful and meaningful way. We've got a fantastic agenda for you all this morning over the next hour. So we're going to start off with our friend Mark from Microsoft, who's going to talk us through the importance of a data and AI strategy and how that leads us into delivering real, tangible business value. And it's always really, really fascinating and interesting to get Microsoft perspective on these points of view. Following that, we'll be moving into how we actually understand and articulate what the AI value proposition is for our organization. How do we start to put a pin on the different things that we're going to get from AI that are valuable to us, and how do we approach those? And then lastly, we'll talk about how we build that into a roadmap that we can start to work through and strategic direction that we can follow to help us deliver on those AI value propositions. And all being well, we should have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. Just a couple of housekeeping notifications here. So anyone that is attending this session or has registered for this session will receive the slides and the recording within the next day to 2 days or so. So please obviously take notes, listen in, but be aware you will receive this content as well. There is a Q&A function built into the software for this webinar. So please feel free to submit any questions that you have through that Q&A window. Of course, bear in mind, we've got myself here from a Microsoft partner as Telefónica Tech perspective. We also have Mark here from Microsoft as well. So feel free to direct your questions to either myself or to Mark from a Microsoft perspective. You'll have noticed that you'll all be muted. This is just so that we can get through the content nice and smoothly without any interruptions. So please use that Q&A function if you have any questions you want to direct to either myself and Mark. And without any further ado, I will hand over to Mark for him to do an introduction to himself, and he will take you through the first part of our webinar. So over to you, Mark.
Amazing. Thanks, Matt. And good morning, everyone. A pleasure to be spending the next hour or so with you as well. So as Matt mentioned, I'm Mark. I lead our data, apps and AI specialist team in our UK corporate accounts business. And fundamentally, our role is to help customers like yourself get the most value you can out of your data, unlock it for competitive advantage, gain greater insight, and also build a way and a path forward to utilizing AI as well, which is obviously what we're going to talk all about today. However, we couldn't do that alone, and we work really closely with partners such as Telefónica Tech, who take our Microsoft products and turn those into solutions for customers like yourself, and hopefully identifying your business challenges and helping you advance with your business ambitions. So with that, we'll dive into the content, and Matt, maybe you could move me along a couple of slides. I actually just wanted to start with this quote. So this is Thomas Watson. He was the chair and CEO of IBM in 1943. And he said, I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers. And I don't put this slide up to kind of say, oh, look how wrong you were, Tom. I actually put it up to showcase how hard it must have been to imagine the technological advancements that we've seen since 1943. And I think there's a lot of parallels actually to that moment to where we are now. And actually, I deliberately use the word imagine because I think it's incumbent on all of us to imagine the possibilities that AI can bring in terms of helping your business thrive right through to solving some of society's biggest challenges. And actually, from a UK market perspective, we believe that the AI can have up to £2.5 trillion impact on the UK economy alone. And actually, as Microsoft, we are investing £2.5 billion in AI infrastructure and skills over the next few years. And critically, a lot of that is around training for organizations and employees. And actually, to that point, when this quote was said, actually 60% of the jobs that we have now didn't actually exist. And actually, it shows how job roles evolve through technological advancement. So pleased to see that Microsoft is also making that investment. If we move forward, the next slide is really about the why. Well, why is this important? And actually, I think this illustrates it really well in terms of for every dollar a company invests in generative AI, they see the return on investment around nearly four times, 3.7 times. And this is actually the purpose of today in terms of how can we support organizations such as yourselves unlock productivity and kind of ROI gains similar to that. And if we move forward onto the next slide, this really kind of charts the kind of way forward to drive and derive value from AI. And these are the key kind of pillars of success that we see. And actually, the first thing I really want to call out is actually technology is only one of those pillars, and it's on the far right hand side, which is AI is not a technology problem, it's a business problem that the AI can help support your business ambitions. And really, successful organizations are the ones that will align AI to their business strategy and use it to identify their business challenges and overcome some of those hurdles. So if we just walk through these in turn, actually, first of all, this is around organization and culture. And actually going back to the slide at the start and the kind of the word imagine, it is actually about how do you foster an environment where you have inquisitive employees that imagine the future of that organization using AI and come up with use cases and scenarios that are going to benefit the company. And actually, there's an element here also in terms of the role of leaders within the organization. Are the leaders of your organization modeling actually AI? Are they using it? Are they showcasing it? Are they sharing actually when it worked, when it didn't work, and their key learnings as well? It's also about identifying champions and those early adopters that will be at the forefront of pioneering new solutions within your organization, and actually how you harness those to get the late majority on board with potential use cases. Next is around strategy, which I talked through, which is actually having a clear view of actually what are your organizational goals and then aligning AI to help achieve those outcomes. Next is around experience, and we talked on skills. And actually, this is both from a technological standpoint and then a user standpoint as well. And there's really kind of two areas there. From a user standpoint, a knowledge worker, someone out in the field, is actually, do they have the necessary skills to interact with whatever AI solution that you implement? And then from a technology standpoint, within your digital and technology teams, have you got the right skills in place in order to lead that transformation and actually take advantage of AI? And then we move on to governance, right? And I'll talk through this in a little bit more detail in a moment. from our surveys, we identified that 90% of business leaders say that AI will play a significant role in their future as an organization. However, 60% of that 90% say that they don't currently have a plan. However, conversely, when we surveyed employees, 75% of employees within organizations say that they're currently using some sort of generative AI tool. And now that presents both opportunities and challenges. That also shows the prevalence of generative AI and the explosion over the last year or so. But it also shows that actually a lot of those employees may be using tools that might not be kind of sanctioned by the organization. And actually governance plays a key role here in terms of your data strategy, your data security, and then for also identifying the right tools and permissions for your organization. And then finally, once you've done all of those things, it's about picking the right tech and the technology that's going to help you meet your aspirations. And yes, there is lots of technology available out there, but also it presents a broader consideration set, which is around buy versus build. And actually, this is not a new thing. This has always been an option to customers when exploring technology options, but one that's really prevalent in the world of AI. Are you going to buy something off the shelf that's going to help meet most of your goals? Or are you going to actually invest in building skills and capability yourself? And I'll talk more to this later, but really our kind of thoughts are build what's going to differentiate you, right? Buy what is going to be kind of a commodity experience and invest your time and money and effort in building that technology that's going to differentiate your organization and bring greater customer experience as well. So if we move on to the next slide, actually the way that AI brings a different way of actually interacting with technology. And again, this is not new. We've started from kind of tape and punch cards right through to keyboard and mouse. And actually, AI presents a new multimodal way of interacting with technology, whether that is with keyboard and mouse right through to speech. And off the back of that, actually, it presents an opportunity for automation through agents, which we'll talk through. But fundamentally, AI is only as good as the data that you have as an organization, and your data is your competitive advantage. It is your differentiator. And I'll talk to that more in a moment. So if we move on, these are the 4 core areas that we think AI can support customers such as yourselves. So enriching employee experiences, reinvent customer engagement, reshaping business processes, and bending the curve of innovation. So if we take them in turn, employee experiences, from a Microsoft standpoint, that is predominantly our Copilot for M365 product. But this is all around how can we help employees in organizations increase their productivity by increasing the speed that it is and ease to discover and disseminate information across your organization, whether that's being able to identify organizational data easier, whether that's being able to understand what's happened on a Teams call through the transcript or catch up, being able to disseminate that information. But it's also about AI being a coach to every employee, right? In terms of whether it's helping them come up with a proposal or new ideas, whether it's actually feedback in terms of actually how they came across in that meeting. And actually, we as Microsoft have gone on a huge journey in terms of our adoption of Copilot internally. And actually, when Copilot was launched, we took the decision to roll that out to all 65,000 sales and marketing colleagues pretty much straight away. There's an opportunity cost to that. That means that's compute resource that we're taking for ourselves versus potentially sharing with customers in that instance. So therefore, it was really critical that we saw the ROI on that investment as well. And actually, our data internally shows us that our sales community that use Copilot daily bring in 10% more revenue and close 20% more deals. So an interesting learning in terms of our adoption. And again, we've gone through a journey in terms of really identifying what are the use cases that will help every employee from a daily perspective. Some of the other scenarios that we've seen a 12% quicker speed to resolution in our call center or support organization. 5,000 support colleagues around the globe. I don't know about you, but you don't typically call support if you're having a good day. You tend to call support when you're having a bad day and you need something resolved pretty quickly. So actually a great kind of outcome there. And then from an internal perspective, from an HR ticket point of view, our HR tickets are getting closed 40% quicker, because actually we've been able to interact through AI and agents to be able to get the answers to questions much quicker, whether that's information on vacation, policy, maternity, paternity policy, whatever it might be. We're getting to a speed to resolution to those 40% quicker. Next is around reinventing customer engagement, and this is actually how can you offer greater and faster, greater and more enhanced digital experiences to your customers, right? And actually, this is something as users that we kind of expect. User expectations are always increasing in terms of being able to access information, get access to a product or service quicker, and probably more likely through a digital touch point or an end-to-end digital experience. Next is around reinventing kind of business process. As any organization is an artifact of the business processes that exist within it to be able to deliver the service that they offer to their customers. And often these are multi-system based, lots of different systems talking together that revolves multiple different kind of touch points. It might involve human intervention at certain points. I was speaking to a customer a couple of weeks ago that take freight off of trains and lorries and put them on ships. To be able to do that, there was 30 different touch points, some of which were paper-based, right? There is a huge opportunity for that to be automated and get to productivity much quicker. And then the final piece is bending the curve of innovation. And this is what I talked about earlier in terms of building what's going to differentiate you as an organization. And this is where actually investing the time there will lead to greater outcomes and positive experiences, both internally and for your customers. So if we move on to the next slide, the way we think of, and actually just move us on one more, Matt, if that's okay, the different AI options out there for you as customers is we think of every employee having a co-pilot and every business process being transformed by an agent. So as I mentioned before, co-pilot is your UI to access AI, and we feel that every employee has a co-pilot to increase their personal productivity and act as a coach. And then an agent being able to absorb, understand business processes, be able to do repeatable tasks quickly and at a high volume to be able to speed up the efficiency and internal optimization of your organization. So if we move on, this just then really kind of puts into perspective the different kind of product solution areas available from Microsoft. And as I mentioned before, there's really options for you as customers in terms of buy and building, but actually this middle pillar actually represents a new option as well, which is extend. So our guidance from Microsoft is push Copilot as hard as you can in order to meet your business needs in the first instance. If you've got an AI scenario, actually can Copilot do that before investing much more time in building something? However, if there's features and functionality that are specific for your organization or business process, actually Copilot Studio allows you to extend the functionality of Copilot specific to your organization. And then actually in the far right, if there's actually around building your own solution area, this is where the Azure platform is available to you to take all advantage of all of the AI capabilities that Copilot is built on and build a bespoke solution for you. However, if we just transition, as I mentioned earlier, AI is only as good as the data that you have as an organization. And actually, we are living in a world where This year and every year before, for the past few years, we will create more data this year alone than any other year of human history combined. And we are seeing a huge explosion in terms of the volume of data, the velocity of data, and the variety of data available. Everything from a CRM system to your health fitness tracker presents data or collects data in some way. And actually, as I mentioned earlier, data is what differentiates you. But if you can't get that in a consolidated fashion into one central repository to be able to reason over that data, or equally, you haven't got the right data governance and quality controls in place, actually, one, you might not be able to leverage the benefits of AI as much, or if you do and you haven't got the right data quality and data governance structures in place, you actually might be feeding the wrong data into the model that's going to give you the wrong outcomes, right? And it's that classic poor data in, poor insights and outcomes out as a result. And actually, if we move on, actually every organization has a multitude of choice available to them. And this is just one of the quotes that we heard from a customer the other day in terms of, I'm the chief data officer and I don't want to be the chief integration officer. And that's because if you move on to the next slide, there is a lot of choice available to you as customers. These are all the different data and analytics and AI tools in the market from a commercial B2B standpoint. And it's a lot. And actually being able to, you want to be able to spend time on deriving insight and action from your organization versus stringing these different kind of solution areas together. So actually one of the things Matt will talk through is actually our Fabric portfolio, which does exactly that in terms of your end-to-end solution for the ingestion, transformation, and presentation of data all in one kind of easy software as a service package. And I'll end with this. This is really the kind of typical curve that we see, or the journey that we see organizations going on to prepare themselves and take advantage of AI. And the first is absolutely what I mentioned earlier, which is establishing a central repository for that data, getting all of your different data sources in one place so you can start to kind of reason over that data, break down organizational silos, and actually be able to kind of compare all of the data in one place. Next is actually identifying, once you've got your data in the right place, what are the high value business use case that are going to progress your organization, that's going to help you achieve your business goals. And then once you've done that, actually, how can you use AI to help you get there? And that might be from a generative AI standpoint, it might be from a machine learning standpoint, but actually how do you map the right technology for the right business use case? And with that, I'll hand over to Matt to be able to talk through actually from a Telefónica Tech standpoint, how do they take the products and solution from Microsoft to turn those into solutions that are going to help you meet your business goals from Microsoft. And as I'll end with this, I think really is incumbent on all of us to imagine the art of the possible that AI can bring. And with that, I'll hand over to Matt to take us on with the next bit of the content. Thank you, Matt. Hey, Matt, you're just on mute there.
Hopefully that works. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Brilliant. That's a classic, isn't it? Apologies, everyone. So I was just going to say, thank you very much, Mark. A really interesting first few minutes there. I think some of the points made around using your data to differentiate your AI solutions, but fundamentally having those kind of foundational data platforms in place is really, really essential, and definitely some of the themes that I'll look to build on in the next few sections here. So where I'm going to kind of take this now is starting to look at how we understand the value that AI can build in for organizations. Mark made some fantastic points around the different options we've got with Microsoft to build and utilize AI. What's really, really critical is that we understand what we're getting for that and how we capitalize on that return on investment. So the first thing to understand is that there are different value propositions that organizations might be looking for when they're investigating an AI initiative. So the first is perhaps can we create more value? Can we provide more value to the market or in the products or the services that we provide by using AI? Second might be, can we actually do what we do more efficiently? Can we get through more orders? Can we ship more products? Can we just be a more efficient organization? Can we free up more of our employees' time? So can we kind of enhance the operational efficiency of our organization? Again, using those kind of AI initiatives. And lastly, typically we see organizations that are perhaps looking for better decision making, better data-enabled kind of data-backed decisions, so that when they're making those kind of choices in a business sort of day to day, they've got that data at their fingertips, putting the right data in front of the right people at the right time. And underpinning all of these are a set of kind of key enablers. So if you want to be able to capitalize on these different value propositions, there are certain things you would want to have in place. For example, having a culture of data and AI fluency. Certainly having the right ethical and AI governance in place to ensure that you're not at risk of any sort of regulatory, reputational damage, for example. And of course, being ready for AI. Is your organization actually ready and willing and able to take those steps into those kind of first initial AI initiatives? So we'll talk a bit more about these in a bit more detail now. So first of all, when we're thinking about value creation, we're really honing in on that point that Mark made about using your data and sort of more customized AI solutions to differentiate the way that you operate in a market. Be that you selling and shipping products, or be that you providing services, there are numerous ways that AI can help to differentiate what you do. Well, that's potentially providing more innovative solutions for your customers, or allowing you the ability to start to personalize and tailor experiences around customers, but using the impact and the intuitive nature of generative AI to allow you to do that. Using AI in this way can really help add more value to what your organization brings. Of course, the second, all around efficiency. So automation is everything, in a lot of these conversations around AI. And Mark talked about this in a number of ways around things like Copilot Studio, but automating those business workflows and those business processes. And all organizations have these kind of repetitive tasks or time-consuming processes, whether it's, scanning through documents and creating summaries, or whether it's kind of the opposite, taking a smaller piece of text and generating content out the back of it. All these things can now be automated thanks to the power of generative AI. And of course, in a personal productivity perspective, employees can have these co-pilots there to assist them with their day-to-day working lives, be it in Excel or PowerPoint or Word. They've got specialized tools that are there to help them. So we can really start to automate a lot of those initial draft steps like content creation, and kind of then supporting those through human review. So that can make our organization much, much more efficient. Lastly then, decision support is all about making sure we've got the right data in front of the right people at the right time. So having AI-driven knowledge discovery can help go and find that information in SharePoint sites, in various different knowledge bases or proper SQL type databases, and make sure that data is summarized and clear and coherent for the user that needs to read it. So if you're a sort of coming from a marketing persona, for example, you might need a certain perspective on that data to be able to make the decisions that you need. Conversely, if you're from a sales role, you may need the similar data, but at a slightly different perspective. And using the power of generative AI, we can start to give you those different slants on that data as and when you need them. But of course, going beyond sort of just typical generative AI, we can also use AI to make predictions and forecasts about future scenarios based on historical data. And this can allow us to make much, much more informed decision-making when we're looking at various different business scenarios in the future. As mentioned, there are always key enablers behind these things. These things don't just happen overnight. There are things we need to do, foundations we need to lay to make sure these things are available to our business. So the first one is looking at that data and AI fluency, that culture of data and AI. And this really stems from having that commitment to data quality and high data standards, and taking care of that data and making sure that it is as high quality as possible when it is being fed into any kind of AI initiative. Other things include being open to experimentation and being agile with your data, being able to exchange that data with other departments in ways that maybe haven't initially been looked at. And that will help to really bring forth that momentum and that impact that can come out of that data. Of course, ethical AI governance is essential. There are numerous stories in the press about how AI has kind of caused reputational or financial damage to organizations. So having that ethical AI governance is essential. Whether we're simply following a framework that instills compliance and fairness, or we're making sure that we are continually reflecting on the AI initiatives that we're building, we have to make sure we have some sort of guidelines in place to make sure we're consistent with that. And of course, the last point about AI readiness. So if we don't have our data in a well-organized format, it gets very difficult to understand what data we have and of what quality it is. Of course, we need to make sure our employees are educated and are willing to adopt AI. Otherwise, we're simply never going to get our return on investment. And of course, having that right data infrastructure in place is essential. So when we then start to look at the different approaches that we can take to these different AI value propositions, there are a number of things that we can start to think about. So of course, we can look at AI from the standpoint of personal productivity. And here we've seen tools like Copilot, things like Microsoft 365 Copilot also coming into the forefront, but also even things like ChatGPT Enterprise, for example, all have these kind of personal productivity focus. So we'll get a bit more into the details about that. But that is one approach to AI, is that you use it as a personal productivity tool. Of course, the second perspective is that we take on that view of using our data and our own customized processes to differentiate how we utilize AI. And this is where that AI for organizational enhancement comes into play. How can we build something that's a bit more customized and is built around our organizational data to really allow us to have that broad scaled out impact for not just individuals, but for an entire organization or entire departments? And of course, there is the sort of the buy option, right? You can buy software that has AI built into it nowadays. So there's a number of different options that we can look at for AI that is embedded within commercial products. So starting out with the personal productivity perspective, as mentioned, we've got things like Copilot now built into Windows. We've also got Microsoft 365 Copilot built into all the tools that we use regularly, such as Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Power BI, etc. Everything has its own Copilot nowadays. And that's the beauty of these personal productivity tools. They are built into the software that we use and our employees use. So they're right there at your fingertips to help you achieve the task at hand much quicker and much, much simpler. Of course, we have to bear in mind that these tools all perform differently for different users who are more or less familiar with using AI to help them with their tasks and with their roles. Some people, of course, will take it in their own minds to go and do some training and understand about things like prompt engineering. Others perhaps won't. So we have to understand that some people will use these tools differently to others. And of course, it's quite tricky to measure the ROI of these tools based on that individual usage. Mark gave a fantastic example of scaling Copilot out to 65,000 individuals. And that really shows that in order to get that ROI, you need that broad scale. Rolling these tools out sort of on an individual basis can make things much more difficult to understand what return on investment you're getting. Of course, moving on to organizational enhancement. So we've got a number of options available to us here. So using things like Azure AI Foundry is our kind of central ecosystem and hub for all things generative AI in the Azure platform. We've also got things like Azure OpenAI services, where we have the options to use the latest and greatest OpenAI models, including things up to ChatGPT 4.5, for example, is all available to us in there. And also things like Copilot Studio as well, using the Power Platform to build out those more customized solutions. So these solutions may be less embedded into the tools that your organization work with, but they are highly customizable to suit any of those business processes and those ways of working, and can be finely tuned on your data that your organization relies on and has worked hard to curate and to embed with data quality. So really their focus is on scaling out and giving that capability to support some of those more specific use cases, as opposed to generic kind of personal productivity enablers. So sure, whilst they might not be as closely embedded into the tools that we use, we can actually be much more familiar with the KPIs and the success metrics behind these, so that we can measure that ROI much, much easier. And finally, we can talk about AI that is embedded into commercial products or for commercial use. So Dynamics 365 is a fantastic example of this. They have Copilot for sales, they have Copilots for customer service, and they have Copilots for customer insights, and I'm sure other Copilots in addition to that as well. But these are all built into the product, so you have not quite as much control over the way those Copilots are built, but they are there to help complete certain processes that might be tuned to a sales process or a customer sales process. So of course, this is enterprise grade AI. It's built into the software that people already use. And their focus is really on getting people to do the process they need to do in that software quicker and in a more enhanced way. Some of these can be focused on individuals, for example, summarizing individual customer personas, but also some of these can be focused on organizational departments as well. So it's good to see that these kind of span both the personal productivity and organizational enhancement perspectives. So when we think about these different approaches to adopting AI, we have to understand that there are different considerations and different routes and feasibility options around this. So of course, personal productivity is relatively easy to switch on. These tools like Copilot or Copilot from Microsoft 365, with the right licensing in place and the right sort of motivation, these are relatively easy to turn on and start rolling out for select groups of users for trialing. However, until we start to really scale that out, we're not going to see that massive organizational impact initially. That might take a little bit more to get there. And of course, without the training, the adoption, the education, to really ensure that users are making the most out of those Copilots, there is a chance that that organizational impact will be somewhat reduced. Next, we have commercial products. These might take a touch more fine-tuning and customization for us to really start to embed them. But of course, they can be much, much more impactful as they are potentially transforming the way we do certain business processes, certain sales processes, or document processing, for example. These are all things that commercial products can do and have very, very big impact. Again, with not too much adoption risk. Lastly, of course, we have that organizational enhancement. So the expectation here is that is there very likely to be some sort of custom development, very likely to be some involvement from subject matter experts in the business. So overall, and I think Mark made this point really nicely, there will be more time and effort invested into getting these kind of solutions and initiatives off the ground in a successful way. But if done right and if done successfully, these can be truly transformational and really, really impactful for organizations large and small. So now we've understood that we have kind of the two dimensions. We have the business strategic needs, be they creating value, operating more efficiently, or having better data-backed decisions. And we have our different perspectives, whether we're looking at personal productivity, organizational enhancement, or looking at just purchasing AI through a commercial product. We can start to kind of triangulate our approach and understand how our different use cases fit into our overall appetite for AI adoption. For example, if we want to look at operational efficiency as our kind of motivation for looking at AI, and we're quite keen to take on an organizational enhancement level of project, we can understand that that's where we want to meet, and we can start to align use cases to that specific kind of point in this space here. So for example, use cases like automating fraud detection. This will help us to operate more efficiently because we'll be able to automate those fraud detection processes. And really that could be transformational for our organization. But we're going to have to give it some of our data. We're going to have to spend time refining those algorithms. So that is an organizational enhancement level piece. Also things like claim processing. Again, we'll need to supply our data. We'll need to fine tune that process. But ultimately it will make us much, much more efficient. And when we kind of progress this thinking, we can start to understand a whole vast array of different use cases and how they fit into this kind of grid that dissects these two different dimensions. For example, if we want to look at value creation, but we want to utilize kind of commercial off-the-shelf products, there's a whole wealth of code generation tools that we can look to invest in. Of course, if we're looking at operational efficiency, we can look at things like predictive analytics. Can we forecast and predict things better? Or can we automate the generation of content for our marketing team, for example? And of course, making better decisions. So, in a commercial product, we have things like Copilot for sales that can summarize customer data for us. But we could also look at retrieval agents that can go through our SharePoint and our document libraries and retrieve data for us in a much more efficient way, and even summarize for us for that in sort of human intuitive language. So now we understand how we start to understand the different value propositions and how we can align our approach against those value propositions to define how the use cases can be progressed. It's important to start looking at how we build up that roadmap. So typically we look at something like this sort of AI maturity curve, and this is not really anything new to AI. This is a kind of standard technology adoption curve. You know, whether you're buying an off-the-shelf sort of software package, or you're taking on any kind of transformation project, there is a similar kind of curve that we look at, and AI is no different. So we start here with awareness, which is all about building awareness of AI and understanding the facts about AI in your organization. Activation is then moving that through into laying the foundations for a successful AI implementation and looking at the different use cases we might have available to us. Moving on to adoption, which is about building something tangible that the business can start to experiment with, something that they can point to and say, we're able to do this with AI and it's driving this X amount of value. And then advancement is all about taking that to the next level, rolling out multiple of those different prototypes or pilots and having multiple AI initiatives that might be in production or at least in an operational state. So to break this down a little bit further, so when we think about awareness, many organizational employees have a general awareness of AI. It's all over the place in media. Anyone, partners, you talk to suppliers, you talk to folks like Microsoft. AI is made very aware to all of us that work in these modern organizations. Many, even white goods in your kitchen probably have AI built into them, for example, and AI is a heavily kind of marketed and very pervasive thing nowadays. What we need to try and do is translate that into a organizational awareness around AI and start to link those kind of concepts about AI and how it can be used for automation and making tasks and kind of things more intelligent, how we link that to the actual challenges and the opportunities that we have in our business and how AI can be applied into those to actually make a tangible initiative come to light. So to start doing that, we can think about things like lunch and learns, obviously attending webinars like today, going to conferences and events. There's many sort of free to attend events and conferences that can really help to understand the facts, help you understand the facts around AI and how it can help build up that momentum to drive you on to activation. So when we're looking at activation, we're really starting to understand what are the business challenges and what are the opportunities that might be available to us and how those apply and how AI solutions can apply to those. We really want to start to be able to inspire that momentum by getting the business kind of behind these use cases so that we can start to articulate the art of the possible. A big part about this is qualifying those initiatives. So looking at how feasible these use cases are and how impactful they're going to be so that we can start to define what that initial pilot or prototype or proof of concept is going to be that we can then use in our adoption phase. And when we're talking about adoption, we're really starting to look at, can we build something that is tangible, that we can demonstrate that we can actually use AI to tackle some of our challenges or opportunities? Can we build something that will have quantitative and defensible benefits that we can point to and say, we're able to drive impact for our organization using this AI initiative? And of course, it's really important to have that strong backlog of AI opportunities so that should the initial idea that we have not work out as intended, we've got a number of different options that we have available to us. We can then continue to kind of capitalize on that investment in our AI infrastructure and effort. Lastly, moving on to advancement, this is all about having the ability to continually scale out prototypes, POCs, proof of concepts, etc., without having to compromise on the quality or the return on investment of the ones that are already in progress. Of course, this also brings in a number of the peripheral concerns around governance and having that ethical framework in place and really making sure that is embedded into every fiber of our organizational being when we're looking at that kind of AI initiatives. So what might this actually look like? How might this actually sort of play out when we're looking at this from an organizational perspective? So of course, when we're looking at awareness, of course, we might engage, AI experts and consultants to come in and look at the different facts Maybe talk about how AI might impact our particular organization, or at least our industry, our sector. What maybe our competitors doing, or other organizations like us, how are they using AI to drive the needle in one direction or another? And also we might start to look at mapping different parts of the organization and stakeholders to establish how we might approach AI with different organizational departments, or even looking to stand up things like AI working groups or task forces. They give us that ability to unify our AI efforts. And it's worth mentioning, so when we talk about kind of mapping those stakeholders, there is occasionally different perspectives on AI from different types of stakeholders. And it's important to understand that and the different approaches we might look at to support those. So when we look at the stakeholders across an organization, we tend to sort of break them out in these two different dimensions. So of course we have our optimists, who may have plenty of experience working with AI and embedding these kind of AI initiatives, but potentially in this organization, they don't have the clarity of outcome to really help drive their objectives. So it's really important that we help them see how they can use AI to sort of impact and sort of drive their objectives forward. Then we have our advocates, these people that have personal experience using AI and building out AI initiatives, or at least implementing them, and also can really clearly articulate how AI helps them achieve their organizational goals. And we can use these as our kind of advocates and our ambassadors to help the optimists, enthusiasts, and the skeptics to kind of get where they need to get to with AI. Our enthusiasts, maybe they can see, what they want to achieve with AI and what their kind of objectives are. They just haven't quite got the experience to actually get there. So they need to work with other parts of the business who maybe are slightly more mature in that space to help them achieve their goals. And of course, lastly, you will always have your skeptics that maybe haven't seen AI succeed in organizations before, and maybe just need to be helped to see the art of the possible and share those kind of positive experiences around AI being an impactful way of working. And these things can be driven using these AI working groups or task forces to help pull together these different stakeholders and manage them through that AI adoption journey. Next up, we have activation. And here we really want to start building that momentum to wind up towards some sort of prototype or some sort of proof of concept type deliverable. So here we might run what we call envisioning workshops, and I'll go into a bit more detail about that later in just a moment to decipher what our potential use cases are. We might start to look at the different data sources we've got across the organization. As we know, data is critical for any AI project. And one of the most important steps is then prioritizing those AI initiatives, so we know where we want to step first, but also what our backlog of AI initiatives looks like following that. So as mentioned, our envisioning process. So what we do is we start out by listing all the issues. What are the challenges, or what are the opportunities that are available to the organization that perhaps we're struggling to get any kind of tangible success with or traction with currently? Once we understand all of that, we can really start to look at the big picture. How do those challenges or those opportunities align to the objectives of the organization? What are the big ticket items that are maybe not even technology or AI focused, but that we can align those challenges and objectives to, where we might be able to then improve on those using AI? We then start to zoom in and look at the evidence. And here we'd want to start talking to the subject matter experts, the kind of data experts that understand how those systems work, and start to get some of that tangible, quantifiable evidence. What are the KPIs? What are the metrics that are going to prove that this AI initiative is potentially successful or actually is not delivering the value that we want in the way that we expected it to? Once we've kind of got that evidence, we can really start to see why this is an important use case for us to focus on and how we're going to measure the success of that use case as we start to develop it. Then we get into some of the more practical matters. So do we actually have that data available to us, or is it locked in some system behind a firewall somewhere? Have we got the right people and processes in place for us to be able to build this thing out? And really understanding all those different resources is essential. And once we've got all those pieces in place, we can start to look at what a candidate solution might look like were we to approach this from an AI perspective. And once we've kind of gone through that process, we should be able to build this kind of prioritized view where we can look at the different impacts of our different AI use cases versus how feasible or accessible they are. And that will very, very quickly highlight to us the most impactful use cases that are also the most easy for us to go after. And that can help us to build out that prioritized backlog. Of course, at this stage, it's really important to capture what are the success metrics we're looking at. And are those, just standard metrics and KPIs? Can we reduce the number of X? Can we increase the number of Y, for example? And often they can be sort of boiled down into financial targets. Or can we understand, where are their hidden costs? What are the budgets that are at play in the business at the moment? And how can AI help to improve those? Or we could just look at objectives. Can we automate this process end to end, for example? And in particular with the generative AI at the moment, user satisfaction is a very, very important metric that we can use. So understanding what that priority looks like, and also the metrics and success criteria we're going to look at to measure that, is a really, really essential output of the solution envisioning process. Next up, we look at adoption, and this is really all about developing a prototype, something that we can touch and play with, something that will give us something that we can explore about how AI will actually add value. So moving out of the theoretical world and much more into the sort of practical, tangible world there. And we have a process for delivering this, and this is a relatively standard kind of technology build-out process, but there are some nuances with AI that we need to be aware of. Of course, data collection and preparation is essential. Both Mark and I have made that point that data is essential to any AI initiative. But when we're going into the AI scope of things, we need to get really close to that data. We really need to understand, is there any bias in that data? Are there any ethical considerations or issues in that data that might lead to a model or a generative AI agent making informed or kind of potentially harmful responses? We then have this process of model evaluation and tuning, and this is so essential to have humans in the loop when we're building out these processes. And you yourselves as business users and sort of organizational employees may need to do a lot of reading or do certain amounts of interaction with those AI agents or chatbots or initiatives to make sure they are performing as we expect them to. Of course, we have the testing and the validation before we then look to deploy those things out in whatever format is right for the business and right for the use case, so that we can start to scale those things out. Underpinning all of this, of course, is that kind of ethical supervision and ensuring we've got those guidelines in place to make sure that we are building out ethical solutions, but we are also maintaining those ethical guidelines as solutions scale out and start to use more data or start interacting with more employees. And also we've got that monitoring in place to make sure that we are clear on the sort of prompts and inputs and outputs that our models are using. Lastly, we get to advancement. So here we want to be able to develop that monitoring and those feedback capabilities. We want to really understand how our users are using the initiatives that we've built, and are they continuing to get the ROI that we have set out. So that's why those metrics are so essential. We also may find that actually now we've got a capability stood up, we've kind of maybe flushed through those initial few use cases that were potentially slightly more challenging. We're now at a pace where we can start to iterate relatively rapidly on those use cases that we deciphered in the adoption and activation phases. So having that ability to start building those out much more efficiently is something that we can look at in advancement. And of course, continuing to promote those AI tools and supporting those users to get started. So really starting to focus on the communication side of AI and looking at how we get employees more educated and ready to adopt these tools. So I hope that's been some interesting content about, first of all, how we underpin our sort of data and AI strategies using some of the tools that Microsoft have available and the way we should approach those. Moving on to how we understand the value propositions that AI can bring to our business and how we look to sort of build out those different value propositions, and then how we can start to turn that into a roadmap that we can start to take action on as a business. So in terms of next steps, so what we want to leave you with today is that if you're looking at sort of AI adoption, or you think you have use cases, or you want to start to actually understand how AI can potentially impact your organization and what use cases might be available to you, we've got a range of offerings that we can provide to support you through that journey. So whether it be our AI Readiness Kickstarter, which starts to look at all the different impacts that AI might have on your organization and walks through things like those envisioning processes and can help to build out things like an AI strategy, or whether you're looking to support to actually build out that first initial use case, using those kind of building out those proofs of concepts and getting that sort of tangible, demoable prototype that you can use to see how AI will actually function in that regard. Or if you're looking to scale out numerous different use cases, we've got some offerings here that can help support do that. So please do get in touch should any of these be of interest. I also just want to take a moment to plug some upcoming content. So in about a month's time, we have a fantastic webinar hosted by my colleague Jose, who's going to talk about Microsoft Fabric. This will also be post FabCon next week. So there's bound to be some fantastic updates and release announcements from that conference that we'll be able to run you all through. Jose is one of the early adopters of Microsoft Fabric and has a wealth of experience using that tool. So that's bound to be a fantastic webinar all about Fabric and how that can be used to underpin your data and AI journey. We also have a fantastic webinar from our colleague Ben, who is talking about how AI can be driven through data culture and the kind of fundamentals you need in place to understand how AI will impact that. And we also have our Tech Talk series, which has got some fantastic content ranging from DevOps through data strategy and including things like Power BI as well. So lots of content for you all to enjoy there. We do actually have a few moments for questions. I'm just going to see if I can open up the Q&A window here. So I can see there's no questions yet. So Mark, if you don't mind, I might just take a moment to ask you a quick question, just from a Microsoft perspective. Okay. And this is a question that we get, relatively often. But where do you see organisations having the most success with AI?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think it goes back to kind of what we've both talked to, which is around alignment to business strategy. AI is just a tool to help you get to the outcome that you want versus the other way around. So I love the kind of matrix that you took, the audience through in terms of actually how do you identify those high value use cases. And I think it's also about starting small as well, being very specific once you've identified that use case and not trying to do too much at once. And actually, once you've done that and proved the value, actually the underlying technology can often be used in a very similar scenario as well. So if you've got a knowledge repository for finance, you could probably replicate that for HR. It's just a different data set that plugs into the back of it. So that's definitely around identifying high value business use cases. And then the other piece is actually to what you talked to in terms of identifying the right early adopters and champions within your organization, and actually using them to help generate and gather ideas from the community of individuals within your organization, but also hopefully allowing their energy and enthusiasm for whatever the particular product or solution area to kind of infuse through the organization as well. And actually starting small, both in terms of user case and an audience within your organization, actually then hopefully creates a flywheel for success.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate that. So we've had no other questions, and we're just about on time, so I think we can call it there. I just want to take a moment to thank Mark for his input for this webinar. I think, like I say, fantastically interesting session for the first 20 minutes there. So thank you again, Mark, for your input for that today. I hope everyone has enjoyed the webinar, found it interesting and insightful. As mentioned at the start, all the content will be shared within the next 48 hours or so. So thank you all for coming and watching today. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week. And thank you again for all attending.
Thanks all.